House resumes. The motion is before the House for debate. Yes, Honorable Banshad, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to seek your permission, indulgence, to refer to my notes, please.
Your permission granted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand and confidently say that this Labour Party government is committed to the continued transformation of our local economy. I say indeed, this focused government is staying on track. We are continuing on the mission to build dynamic Dominica, a more resilient people, economy, and country. In other words, a better country with even more opportunities for our people to secure a better standard of living for all Dominicans in this beautiful island. And Mr. Speaker, I say further that the evidence of this abounds, especially in the bill being debated right now in this honorable House. Today, we are seeking authorization for a credit facility to finance the development of a new transmission network from the Roseau Valley to Fokole. I intend to be short, Mr. Speaker, for a number of reasons. Because we have discussed this geothermal project so many times in this honorable House that I have no doubt that everyone listening, everyone who knows about the geothermal project and certainly about the sitting today are all saying aye. You know what that means, Mr. Speaker? They've all agreed. So maybe we shouldn't even be here debating this bill. Mr. Speaker, all of this is tied to the geothermal project that this Dominica Labour Party promised to the people of Dominica. In summary, Mr. Speaker, the geothermal project, which will usher in green energy technology, will bring significant economic, social, and environmental benefits to developing countries, including ours in Dominica. We are all too aware that geothermal energy generation in Dominica will result in a reduction in the cost of electricity, not simply to those of us in here, to households, but also to businesses, hence opening new investment opportunities, bringing us all closer to our development goals. And I think that is important to say, Mr. Speaker. Personally, I am proud of the great progress that we have made in taking us to this point, which brings us much closer to harnessing this powerful, clean, and green resource. Specifically to the loan, Mr. Speaker, those who know of the track record of this government are not surprised that the terms are very concessional. Did I say more? Mr. Speaker, based on the foregoing, I therefore fully support the authorization of a credit facility for the development of a new electricity transmission network to complement the geothermal project. It would, however, be remiss of me not to note that this $104 million project begins in the Roseau Valley but ends in Fokole, which happens to be part of the constituency that I represent in this House. I have been advised, following discussions with a senior official of the Dominica Geothermal Development Company, that residents of Fokole will benefit in more ways than one on completion of the project. Both transmission lines from the Roseau Valley to the Domlec power plant in Fokole will run underground in the Fokole area. My dear constituents, through you, Mr. Speaker, please note that once the geothermal power plant is commissioned, there will no longer be a need for the noisy diesel engines at Fokole. I know, I can hear you from the House. I can hear all of you breathing in Fokole, a sigh of relief. Be assured, guys, I got you. This Labour Party government We got you. I am also advised that consultations with the community will continue. And on this note, I want to encourage the residents of Fokole. We should go to these consultations so that we can be reliably informed of what is going on as it relates to that project. I also want to alert through you, Mr. Speaker, my constituents of the opportunities once this project begins. We need to position ourselves to benefit from that project. And maybe I should say all of those projects associated with the geothermal development by way of employment and the provision of services. Mr. Speaker, I have already said in this House before that one of my pet projects so far as a parliamentary representative is to match my unemployed residents, constituents, with positions, jobs in the private sector. In fact, over the weekend at Almond Park, Mr. Speaker, I expected to see you there. You missed quite a bit of excitement. Almond Park was on fire on Saturday and Sunday, Mr. Speaker. We are bringing back football to Roanoke, and we're doing it in a big way. Mr. Speaker, when I got there on Sunday, I had the small business owner saying to me, Miss B, I cannot complain. Mr. Speaker, what does that say to you? Mr. Speaker, I hope to see you there. I'm going to send you the schedule once I get it so that you can come to and provide some support. Mr. Speaker, and I'm relating my experience at Almond Park on the weekend because I met two young people, both unemployed and have been looking for jobs. And I was so happy that this morning, both of them had interviews. I was able over the weekend to have both of them. Almond Park is in Tarish Street. Are you coming on? Oh, I'll send the schedule on the cabinet chat. Thank you, Honorable Minister. And I was able to organize interviews for both of them. And Mr. Speaker, I said that to say that my people are interested in working. There's a particular community that I will not say out loud now. You go into that community these days in the morning, quiet. Pearson Pala. Mr. Speaker. Everybody's working, Mr. Speaker. There's nobody on the streets anymore. Mr. Speaker, we are transforming the Roanoke constituency. This Kerry Labour Party is making a difference in the Roanoke constituency. We are getting people employed. We are letting them understand the importance of being employed and what it does to oneself. Once you can wake up in the morning, you can go out to work, and you are earning a living. You're now an independent person. Mr. Speaker, good things are happening in Roanoke. And Mr. Speaker, so I'm saying this all because I'm saying to my people, their job opportunities coming, and I want to assure them, Mr. Speaker, through you, I will be getting the details. I will be getting the details so that I can transfer that information to you. And Mr. Speaker, I should probably add this. We're opening a new office. We're getting ready to reorganize our office, and an announcement will be made soon. So there will be somewhere with persons waiting to see you so you can tell us what areas of interest you have as it relates to employment. So Ms. B can continue to do what she's doing, match you with the job opportunities that exist. Mr. Speaker, with this, I lend my full support to the bill being debated today. Thank you.
Yes, Senator Anderson, you may proceed. I recognize Honorable Lloyd. You'll go after. Okay.
Mr. Speaker, may I refer to my notes, please? Your permission to refer to my notes. You have to
Yes,
correct me every
yes, yes.
time.
You have to ask it properly.
Every time you have to correct my notes.
Yes, yes. Permission granted.
How are you, Mr. Blackmore? You had lunch today? It was good? All right, awesome. Mr. Speaker, I rise to give my contribution to the resolution presented in this honorable house, seeking authorization for a credit facility from the International Development Association to finance development of a new electricity transmission network from the Roseau Valley to Fokole. Like the last sitting of Parliament held on December 29, 2023, I read through the resolution, Mr. Speaker, looking for the necessary details needed when making a financial decision, whether long-term or short-term. Due to the absence of all the necessary information needed when making a sound decision, especially a financial one, Mr. Speaker, a list of questions arose. Mr. Speaker, at first I'd like to ask questions, especially because your cousin, my father, Mr. Honorable Henderson, has taught me in the absence of information, you have to ask a question. Mr. Speaker, why do we have to come here time after time asking for additional supporting information as it relates to the resolutions presented? We want to applaud the government. I want to applaud you, Kozo. I want to applaud the government when you do well. Further, we want to share our suggestions and recommendations, Mr. Speaker, and to assist with better accountability as we work together for the development of Dominica, working together. Can we as parliamentarians aim to make the approval process a more inviting one? By virtue of Section 3.1 of the Loans Act, Chapter 64.5 of the 2017 revised laws of the Commonwealth of Dominica, the House of Assembly may by resolution duly passed authorize the minister responsible for finance to borrow by means of credit. Today, we will borrow a sum not exceeding $103.95 million on the following terms. The interest is really good, 0.75% per annum. The commitment charge, 0.5% per annum. The repayment period, 60 semi-annual payments twice a year, grace period for 10 years. So we have a little grace. 10 years is a good grace. We have a big grace. A ginormous grace. As a financial person, is a big grace. Yes. Mr. Speaker, I beg to ask these questions as in the absence of information, this is what one does. Where is the copy of the project financing agreement? Every time I come, I have to ask for that. Why are we not privy to this information, which will help make an informed decision to support or provide recommendations to the resolution? When we apply for these loans, aren't we to present a business plan or a project plan with reasons for requesting financing? Aren't we to present to our lenders documents which shows that we can repay these loans? Having worked in the financial industry for some years, this is a staple request from every lender. As a borrower, you must present a project plan or a business plan to your lender. Where is the project plan which signifies that we as borrowers, we got this, as Ms. Blanchard over there said, Honorable Blanchard, we got this, that when the loan is granted that we have the ability to pay. Mr. Speaker, the Minister for Finance in his preamble earlier informed that DOMLEC does not have the capacity to facilitate the level of transmission that is required at this time, nor do they have the available financing to fund this new electricity transmission network. To date, DOMLEC owns the current transmission system that provides power to the people. With this new electricity transmission network, Mr. Speaker, who will have ownership of the new transmission network? How does this transfer of power affect DOMLEC's ability to operate efficiently, reaping profits? How will this transfer of power, Mr. Speaker, affect the small shareholders of DOMLEC? What is the projected cost for maintenance of the new electricity transmission network that DOMLEC will have to pay? Where will DOMLEC's growth come from to meet its power supply commitments when the government has taken away DOMLEC's production and distribution capabilities, thereby excluding it from the management of the production it is required to sell? While the government continues to announce its efforts to reduce costs and have renewable energy, which I'm all for, everybody wants a reduced bill, how are we going to achieve this reduced cost? This is what consumers of Dominica, like myself, would like to know. How will we benefit? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me firstly to say a pleasant good day to yourself and to my parliamentary colleagues. And of course, Mr. Speaker, if you permit me, allow me to say warm greetings to the good people of the great St. Joseph constituency, the greatest constituency in Dominica and the world by extension. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, you know, every time we say the word geothermal, I have a certain constituent whose speaker is always up. Um, and he is a member sitting in here. But I will not call the member for Granby. You know, he's always very attentive whenever we speak about geothermal, Mr. Speaker. Just to translate. The Speaker permit me from time to time to refer to my notes. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Your permission granted.
Thank you very much.
But I see you already
I saw you shake
agree.
I saw you shake your head, Mr. Speaker. So I
But
follow
yes,
that.
continue.
Thank you very much. Just because I stand to lend my support, remiss of me to not support my constituent. I know he's worked very hard. I also want to commend the Honourable Minister for the hard work and level of leadership that he has shown, Mr. Speaker, in actually working towards the manifestation of this geothermal project. Mr. Speaker, so I want to support the motion before this August body. And I am delighted and thrilled, Mr. Speaker, to stand here on this side of this honorable house. Mr. Speaker, the side that promotes ideologies of progress, prosperity, economic development, and development of Dominica and Dominicans everywhere, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the truth is every country on earth strives to become energy independent. However, the truth is not every single country is able to achieve that feat. Very few countries have the resources to do so. Even fewer countries are not as resilient enough to do so. Fortunately for us in Dominica, Mr. Speaker, we in Dominica encompass all of these qualities. Yes, we have the resource in order to become energy independent. Not just that, Dominicans are an extremely resilient people. And this government, Mr. Speaker, has been extremely proactive in the realization of that goal. So Dominica is more than just capable of doing so, Mr. Speaker, but we are actually doing so. As we speak, Mr. Speaker, we are able to we are practically able to generate geothermal energy, Mr. Speaker, electricity through geothermal energy. So Dominica, through its potent government, Mr. Speaker, in essence, this Dominica Labour Party-led government administration is well poised and on its way to delivering to the people of Dominica geothermal energy, Mr. Speaker. The truth is, there are governments of the past, Mr. Speaker, who have made commitments, who have made promises to the people of Dominica. Every single government who have been in office, in one way or the other, have promised the people of Dominica that they are going to realize energy independence. We are going to become energy independent. Whether it's through a plethora of different means, whether it's through solar, whether it's through hydro, whether it's through wind, and even the geothermal that we speak about, Mr. Speaker. However, this is the only serious government administration, Mr. Speaker, to actually do something substantial in actually realizing this goal, attaining this goal, Mr. Speaker. It's like this government has a proclivity, Mr. Speaker, towards the... So, Mr. Speaker, as Dr. Mark said earlier in some presentation, our government meticulously plans out every single thing, Mr. Speaker, as far as our development is concerned. We understand that climate resiliency is more than just about being able to withstand Category 5 hurricanes or troughs or tropical storms or floods or earthquakes, etc. It has a huge part to play, Mr. Speaker, with being able to produce clean and pure oxygen, which is another reason we also selected geothermal energy, because it's a clean form of energy, Mr. Speaker. And this government has always been biased and always been very productive when it comes to promoting cleanliness, Mr. Speaker. However, the unfortunate reality is, Mr. Speaker, not everyone in this country appreciates cleanliness. That is why we have this incessant campaign about NEP. Anyways, that's a different story, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, geothermal is also a renewable form of energy. It's another very important factor to consider when we speak about sustainability of the energy that is going to be used to achieve climate independence, Mr. Speaker. So what this means is that our reliance on geothermal is going to help us reduce reliance on imported fossil fuels, and more than just that, insulate our economy against the volatility of global energy prices, Mr. Speaker. So, for example, if there is some conflict going on in some other part of the world, say between Ukraine and Russia, Mr. Speaker, which it is, and Russia decides to stop supplying the rest of the world with fossil fuel, then that's not going to affect the price of electricity in Dominica or generating electricity in Dominica in any way. That is because we use, and that brings me to my next point, geothermal energy is a locally sourced resource, because we use our own local resources to basically generate electricity, Mr. Speaker. So irrespective of all of those existential threats and exogenous shocks which continue to challenge and confront the world, Mr. Speaker, and the world's economy, we are basically going to be exempted to such threats, Mr. Speaker. And we can take pride in knowing that we are climate resilient and energy independent nation, Mr. Speaker. Not many countries can say the same. Mr. Speaker, I heard the honorable member raising a bunch of questions. However, the correct questions are never asked in this honorable house. And the truth is, even if I were to stand here, Mr. Speaker, and explain, to elucidate, and to respond to those questions, Mr. Speaker, it is not going to, not going to go anywhere. Because the truth is, Mr. Speaker, there are a lot of people who suffer from something called, and I'll bring this term to Parliament, to the people of Dominica, cognitive dissonance, Mr. Speaker. And cognitive dissonance, it's a term to basically describe willful ignorance. So you're so obstinate in your thinking.
Member, move on, but I caution about those matters.
Thank you. Withdraw, Mr.
Don't get
Speaker.
involved in
Moving on.
personality.
Moving on, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
So proceed, proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, by providing a stable, affordable, and locally produced source of electricity, Mr. Speaker, we empower businesses to thrive. So, for example, the business in Meru, local paradise, would now have a lower operational cost. So he'll have a huge profit margin. So monies that he'd otherwise use in operating his business can be now used to reinvest in certain products that he may sell. He can now buy additional beach chairs or beach umbrellas. So it stands to serve the common businessman in Dominica, and more particularly in the St. Joseph constituency, Mr. Speaker, the greatest constituency in the entire world. Mr. Speaker, it serves to empower households and households to prosper and communities to flourish, thereby laying the groundwork for sustained economic growth and development. Mr. Speaker, so the geothermal project complements other strategic initiatives such as the international airport, as we will speak about, and the modernization of the Roseau City. Now, we all understand the exponential cost it's going to take to basically operate the international airport. Again, this government is very meticulous in its planning, especially where development is concerned, because we understand the dollar value that it's going to take to run this international airport. So this is going to reduce the cost exponentially, Mr. Speaker. And now that money can be redirected towards developing the city or developing Roseau, St. Joseph, for example, or the St. Joseph constituency. We can now look at to construct the route which leads from the York Valley Bridge to the Warner Junction with the dividends of the monies that we have in additional profit, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so by leveraging geothermal power to fuel these endeavors, we not only enhance their sustainability and resilience, but also amplify economic impact. So it's going to literally touch every facet of our economy, Mr. Speaker. Everybody stands to benefit as a result. And you know, Mr. Speaker, it's a project to behold. You know, I was speaking with a constituent not too long ago, Mr. Speaker, and she told me that she was born in 1940. And in 1940, there was no electricity whatsoever. There was some people used the bullseye, gas lamps, these were some really challenging times. And just her explaining these things, Mr. Speaker, allow me to appreciate what has been done in this country. So not only do we have electricity in every household in Dominica, but right now we have the opportunity to produce electricity for our own selves, Mr. Speaker. You know, she went on to say, way back then, when the road from Lapin was done, that citizens of Dominica started chanting Shimeali over, right. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe in a similar way, the people of Dominica should definitely acknowledge this opportunity and should definitely, you know, sing hooray and congratulations to every Dominican, because we all stand to benefit as a result, and that's the truth, Mr. Speaker. So by leveraging geothermal power to fuel these endeavors, as I mentioned, Mr. Speaker, it's going to engender serious economic impacts, attracting tourists, investors, and innovators from around the globe, and positioning Dominica as a hub of opportunities in the Caribbean, Mr. Speaker, in the Caribbean region. I want to also use this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to commend the Honorable Prime Minister for his stewardship and for his support in ensuring that this is a project that is going to be materialized, Mr. Speaker. And I always speak about relationships and the importance of relationships, Mr. Speaker. And the truth is, the way the world is moving, relationships is going to be of extreme importance if we are going to benefit from some of our strategic partners. Take China, for example. You know, or even an investor, for example, Mr. Speaker. An investor is not just going to invest in your country because he or she feels that, hey, Dominica is a very nice place, let me invest in Dominica. No, they have to have a certain level of confidence in the leadership of that party and reverence for leadership of that party, Mr. Speaker. Which is why in these trying times, I continue to advocate and to say to the people of Dominica that leadership right now warrants experience. We have no space for error whatsoever, Mr. Speaker. It warrants a certain level of skill, Mr. Speaker, and competency, all possessed by the Honorable Dr. Roosevelt Skerrit, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, again, I want to commend my dear colleague and my constituent, the Honorable Dr. Vince Henderson. He basically embodies everything. He is the epitome, Mr. Speaker, of a real Jasenju. You know, Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud of my dear constituent, and I will do everything that it takes to ensure I continue to support my constituents in each and every one of their endeavors. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Charles, you may proceed.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I rise to give my contribution to this resolution. And I'd like to seek some permission to refer to some notes because this is a lot of money and I don't want to miss nothing.
Okay, great. Your permission is granted.
The Geothermal Development Company Limited states our mission is to increase the use of renewable energy in the provision of chapter electricity by the responsible exploit of Dominica geothermal resources. Now, geothermal is a brainchild for the Honorable Minister Dr. Henderson. But 1907. But right now, geothermal is not a child anymore. Stating that because geothermal have gotten millions, donation, funding by the government and foreign donors. But I think after a child have become grown and you mold that child properly, that you have to let go of that child. I just repeated that the FS, the financial controller, is not there, but the Minister of Finance is there. After we push and we generate a lot, because we have some facts there that benefits of geothermal energy are clearly documented as the most sustainable source of renewable energy. Yes, it is. I know that. We also give them $150 million. That is just for infrastructure, stated as Mr. Pinard stated earlier on. That's just for infrastructure. That is joke. Now, we come into the now, it's been a long, long while since we asking for geothermal to give back. But anyway, we're giving the child some more support. God, we don't want to abandon our kids. We're going to give them some more support again. Now we give them some more money. Now, just across our neighboring island, Guadeloupe, 1986, that's the year I born. 38 years. 38 years. I hope we pattern from Guadeloupe and take all the unforeseen and the foreseen and all the expenses in consideration. Because this is since 1986. So nobody can come and say it's going to go wrong. Mr. Speaker, we are all in. As the Prime Minister said earlier on, the Chinese say, when you build roads and communication, you can make millions. But based on the supplementary, we have a few roads building, but have more to build. I want to talk about East Coast and West Coast Road. But the most important road in Dominica, I'll leave them to fix it. I'll leave it alone for next time. But we're spending a lot of money on the child has grown in. Now, as he said when he went to Miami and Dubai, it is so, it is so vibrant and so reliable that they're going to get the energy. So that alone can sell itself. So this energy minister can sell the viability of the geothermal without using our little loan and all of this thing to fix our roads and other things. He can sell it because it's so viable. The whole world knows it's viable. You know. We don't ask him if it's viable. You know. We know it's viable. You know. But Margaret said, give us a little ease up on the budget. Go out there and ask for private funding, donors, to give us we want to be a little more liquid because we're in a tropical place and we want to be resilient. We want to know when something, God forbid, something hit. I'm so glad the Minister of Government's coming. When something hit, we have something in the kitty there so we can react and sustain the economy very fast. Because when we just throwing down money in heat and you don't give him back no heat, it's a hard thing. We want back something, but we know they're going to come now. Look, I 38 years in. God look, no God look maybe briefly like a benefit. We need it to come back. So what I just said just because I was 16-year-old. In 10 years now, she's 26. And that time everyone started to pay the loan. She don't even know about the Geothermal. She hearing about that. So now, the child have grown. Millions, millions, millions. Let go the child. The child have to go out to Miami, get the funding. Because this is putting a little burden on us. Because it have a lot of other things to do. International airport. All of them put the international airport in the Geothermal. When it reach Fokole, when it reach in Wesley, that's the next course again. When are you going to reach Wesley? We're going to pass and go Wesley. Now we have to spend the next month to reach Wesley. Yes, it's viable, but it's costly. Now go look, I have this thing for 38 years. 6 to 7% of the consumption, it is supplied. So I don't know how much it's going to supply here. Dominica have population, a lot of population, compared to us. So yours is viable, but it is viable in our pocket, our government pocket. Yes, but we are all in, so it's too late to even pull back now. We are millions in. So we need to get this thing right, because we have a lot of lessons to learn, because we have a lot of concerns. Because the concern now is geothermal now. This, hold on. According to Dave Stamp, operation manager of Dominica, the International Donor Agency will be required to make grants available for green energy projects. Stamps also indicated that the key tool is to form partnership for this project with institutions like the World Bank, low-cost grant funding if possible. If not, then very low interest rate funding. So they've said that is the government taking on board any of these suggestions that to get, no, you have to, we are forcing our government pockets. Yes, but we are forcing, so you have to remember, we have to let go of the system because we give you millions and millions and millions and we're waiting for outcome. I showed me Honorable Roland Ray again that we have improved the agriculture tremendously. But anyway, we're not going there. And one more thing, OMAT, the agreement. After, well, it's 20-something years, 25 years, they hand it over. You all must have your Dominica, have everything set up to take over, to refinance, to set it up back, to get it to fully, because you're not going to get it 100%. It's not going to be 100%. It's not going to be 100%. No, we have to break that down. $103 million. The interest rate, you have to pay it by 2044. Now, this now is an plan that is unforeseen. Because when you're spending all this, we need some more equipment for hospital, we need to fix some more roads, because if you don't have roads, you cannot make millions, as the Prime Minister stated again. You cannot make millions, we need communication. So this project, as you said, I mean, we are very ambitious, and we want to spend the money to make sure we are the first resilient based on how we push the country. But we cannot force ourselves anymore with geothermal. Geothermal will get there, but let geothermal get there based on the premises and the merit that you push out there, which people already know it is very sustainable. Give our financial pocket a little burden, a little ease up. Stop burdening it without giving back anything. Because the international airport is going to give more and faster before the geothermal. And geothermal is not going to reach Wesley by the time geothermal started. It will never reach Wesley. It's not going to reach Wesley now. Even though it will not reach Wesley for the international airport, it will not reach Wesley in any time. Anyway, that's a matter, that's for technical thing. So now we're going to grant you, the House is going to pass the resolution. We're going to grant you the money. Remember now, we're going to grant you this. When we grant you this, that's it, because we need something out from geothermal. We have grown the geothermal from an infant to an adult. So right now, we just have to make sure this works. We are all in again. Make sure this project works for the benefit for our, not even for us, for our children and our grandchildren, because we're not going to see the profit. As you said, you have the foresight. So we're thinking further ahead. Well, let's make sure this thing works. We cannot pull out in this thing right now. But right now, we have to make sure it works. Millions already grown the geothermal. Because St. Vincent only use a few percent of their money. 83% of St. Vincent, when they were trying to do the geothermal, was grant and funding. They didn't use their money. But this government did a different, but let me bring my point. No, I saw it on the report. Listen to that, listen to that. What I'm saying, that's what I'm saying is that this government invested. So the people and the donors overseas have seen that this government is interested in its own. So now geothermal can sell its own. That's basically what I'm telling you. Geothermal can sell its own. So we are putting too much millions in geothermal. That's all I'm telling you. Let's move on from geothermal. It have other children to get fed. We are getting too much money as spending in geothermal. We are not getting back any benefit. That's all. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Defoe,
Mr.
you
Speaker,
may proceed.
thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to give my support to the resolution, for the authorization of a credit facility. Okay, every time. I can move on my hand. I don't carry anything. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the resolution for the authorization of a credit facility from the IDA, or the International Development Association, for the funding of the transmission line. And I'm listening to the Honorable Charles, from the member of Marigot, and I got sitting confused as to, and I think you were very lenient as to not to rule for relevance. Because I think the paper on the table was at the resolution, but I heard all different subjects. But it's a dear friend from a long time, so that's okay. Some of us have different capacity to articulate things. Nonetheless, let's move on. Also, I listened to the Honorable Reid from the member, Senator Marigot, and looking for the hard figures and so on. And I understand because of her professional background in finance. But those of us who have limited knowledge and have mostly common sense, require much less and trust. Because Honorable Octavia, member of Castle Bruce, will advise me, because I don't know much about the Bible, but I know stories in it, such as Doubting Thomas, and who needed to see before he believed. So, but I will put my trust in the hard people with the knowledge, the capacity on either side of the spectrum, both from the IDA, high-level technical and financial experts, and also from our own Ministry of Finance, who we have gone through many days and many hours in negotiating these things, and also in negotiating these things and coming to the best terms. And I will say, the bottom line I needed is listed here, A, B, C, and D. And the Honorable Reid was very satisfied, as this was an extremely good deal without all of the background figures. And she said so herself. It is a good deal, 10 years grace period, and it's just not about a loan. At that time, and in 10 years' time, there are other loans that the country have contracted, which have already matured. So it is not like you are compounding. So we have to be very clear how we articulate things and what to make the public understand. But as I said, I like to keep things very simple. I'm a simple person, simple-minded. And I will not quote major people, but there is a gentleman in Fort Saint Jean. He has a shop for many, many years. He's an old man. His shop have never cooled. You know, his shop have never sunk. So that means he's very successful at his business practice. And he told me, and he was the only family, that's Mr. Boy. They live, the Honorable Kent Edwards know him very well because he visits Fort Saint Jean, you know. And so he has a shop, and from since growing up, I always know they are the only family I know who continuously have vehicles. Maybe the only family in Fort Asia. Right now, other people have vehicles. You know, we are from the poor community has gone to school and grown through loans, and now we have vehicles. But they were the only family with vehicles. And he told me the other day, just a few days ago, that any man that does not take a loan will never become a man. I say, what? So Mr. Boy, that's how all you bought all of these vehicles, or he has 15 to be exact vehicles, and I've never heard of anyone being confiscated by the bank. So it goes to say that, you know, sometimes you have to be mature as a person, as a country, and take your own responsibility in your own hands. And because this very same government and the other prime minister have constantly been accused of about donor and begging. So I really, you know, don't understand. When you do it on your own, you're criticized. When you ask for grant, you're criticized. When you ask for half a grant, you're criticized. When you ask for concessionary, you're criticized. So how are we supposed to fund this? I believe this is our project. We have to put our money where our mouth is, and we have to create the enabling environment for all of these loans to be paid back. So I'm not going to speak about all of the complementary projects that are going on. That is part of the bigger picture that will create the revenue stream for us to be able to service others. And we're not doing that to leave a burden on people in 10 years' time. I am sure this is well thought out. Okay, this is well thought of, so we're not just creating something because we know in 10 years' time we'll be retired and enjoy our gratuity. So to hell, whoever it is passed on to. This is well thought of by the ministry and also in entities or institutions like the IDA. A bad debt to a country is a bad light on them. So a lot of people do not understand that. These people do not want to issue you a loan that you cannot pay later, you know, because it will speak bad of them, bad of their due diligence. So I say all of these things to say it is taking a loan is not a bad thing. Taking a loan, once it is responsible and in which I have the full confidence, as I said, I am like, maybe like Thomas, I was not there with all the mass, but I trust the people. So I'm not like him. I trust the people who did that work and up to this very point who have negotiated this package. So in its entirety, while it is, Fort Saint Jean is far from the valley, but I can appreciate that we do not have the physical infrastructure there and perhaps the people that will do the London job. But the ultimate benefit of a reduced tariff on electricity will benefit all, will benefit everybody. And access to electricity should be like water, and as the Honorable Prime Minister said, a fundamental right. Just as we have treated water, every household in Dominica, every community should have water, just so there is no corner in Dominica that should not have it. Or, as a matter of fact, not every home in Dominica, regardless of the size or of the grandeur, should have access to electricity. And you can only do that if electricity is affordable. You can only attract manufacturing if electricity is affordable. We can only expand on our business ventures and attract people to the island, investors, if you have affordable electricity. So we don't have to be in the valley. And this is the ultimate aim. At least 40%, 50% reduction. And the numbers look that way as we had articulated before in the previous bill when we were seeking for the funding or the approval for the operation of OMAD. So, I mean, I can go on and on and on and on. But I will just, this was my contribution. I wanted to support the government and the resolution. And that I think we will do very well and we will be much more respected for standing on our own and putting our own investment rather than going everywhere and begging as we were always accused of. So with these few words, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for your listening here.
Honorable Royer, you may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And I also join my colleagues in standing to lend my support to this resolution. Mr. Speaker, we are elated by the fact that the government has entered into an agreement with the Geothermal Power Company of Dominica 2023 Limited to build and operate a 10 megawatt power plant. Now we are into this next phase of the geothermal development, where a new electricity transmission network is required to connect the plant in Luda to the hydro electric power plants in the Roseau Valley and Domlec distribution station in Fokoli. Mr. Speaker, the value of this investment may seem endless, but this will be money well spent because of the endless benefits that will be derived. Mr. Speaker, the cost of energy determines how competitive a business can be in terms of the operational cost. The higher the cost of operation is the higher the cost of the service that is provided. But based on literature and experiences in our country and in other parts of the world, Mr. Speaker, the introduction of geothermal has reduced the cost of energy significantly. Mr. Speaker, this will make us as a country more competitive and we'll be able to attract more investment. This also means that homeowners will have more monies in their pocket because of the anticipated reduction in home energy costs. Mr. Speaker, this investment will support many other investments, particularly in the manufacturing and processing subsectors. I can speak to the $5 million investment that are currently being made in our agro-processors to buy new equipment. That requires cheaper energy, Mr. Speaker. I can speak to the $6.4 million that are currently being made to construct a new national abattoir. That too requires reliable, cheaper energy, Mr. Speaker. I can also speak on the investment that we are planning to construct an animal feed mill, Mr. Speaker. That too requires reliable energy to operate, Mr. Speaker. I can also speak to the ongoing investment in the coffee plant, Mr. Speaker. That too requires reliable, cheaper energy, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I can also speak to the $12 million investment that was recently made to construct a tissue culture lab. That too requires cheaper energy, Mr. Speaker. It does not end there, Mr. Speaker. We have more. I can speak to the $30 million investment that was spent to rehabilitate the fisheries complexes post-Hurricane Maria, Mr. Speaker. That too requires cheaper energy, Mr. Speaker. So with the investment in this transmission line, Mr. Speaker, we are able to bring cheaper, cleaner, and more reliable energy, which will reduce the operational cost, and in turn will reduce the cost of services provided, Mr. Speaker. If we just move quickly to tourism, Mr. Speaker, we can speak to the investments that have been made in all these hotels plants, Mr. Speaker. We can speak to the planned investment in the marina, Mr. Speaker. That too requires cheaper energy to run, Mr. Speaker. And the big one, to crown it, Mr. Speaker, we can speak to the construction of the international airport, Mr. Speaker. That too requires cheaper energy to operate, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the investment in the transmission line will enhance the competitiveness of all this investment, Mr. Speaker. So, just before I sum up, Mr. Speaker, I just want to thank Honorable Vince Henderson for his efforts over the years. That is what they call true resilience in bringing us to this point today. And of course, the Honorable Prime Minister for heading that ship and initiative to ensure that we can reach at this landmark and position where today, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the government has always made wise investment decisions, and this one is no exception. So with this, Mr. Speaker, I want to lend my support to this resolution.
Yes, Honorable Blackmore, you may proceed.
Yeah, Mr. I said I was not going to make any contribution on this matter. But when I realized the significance of it from a political standpoint, firstly, I feel obliged to say a few words. Mr. Speaker, I support in its totality the resolution. But Mr. Speaker, I listened to the member from Marigot, and he made reference to whether I should take care of a child for eternity. And I said to myself, that is what distinguishes the Labour Party from the other parties. It's about caring and loving. Now, I want to also ask him, it makes me think of some folks who stop supporting their children even when they're vulnerable, even when they need your help the most. And he's asking us to turn our backs on a project that is going to create an environment for Dominica to make this country more competitive, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, Honorable Vice Anderson, Dr. Anderson earlier on made a very important point when he spoke about geothermal in the supplementary estimates when he was seeking approval for that very important measure. And he said something I want to give some more currency to, Mr. Speaker. And he spoke about the importance of having leadership and a party in office for a long period of time. And I want to add some currency to that, Mr. Speaker. Because we have been speaking about geothermal. As if to say, one morning, while drinking coffee, looking at the sea, the Prime Minister got up and said, let us pursue geothermal. The kind of thinking, Mr. Speaker, and we are at the point of this project which manifests, Mr. Speaker, the deep thinking behind this project and the planning, Mr. Speaker. I know of a number of folks. I had a friend, I don't want to call his name, his siblings are still alive, and he told me that he was going to get married to a girl, one of the most beautiful girls in our area. I shall not call her name because she's still alive. And he said he's going to get married to her. And I was, and so I look at the girl, I knew her, and I also knew him, and they were not compatible, all right? Then when I spoke with him a couple months thereafter, I realized he had a dream. He was dreaming that he was going to get married to this girl. But I'm saying that, Mr. Speaker, to say that all expressions before of developing geothermal energy, the potential, goes back long before the Prime Minister was born, and long before most of you in this Parliament, on both sides of the House, were even conceived, as I said earlier on. But the leaders before, Mr. Speaker, all they had was a dream. A dream. A dream, therefore, has to be followed by a plan and a vision and the hard work in order to achieve that dream, Mr. Speaker. And that plan is going to require, Mr. Speaker, your ability to mobilize the resources, both in terms of technical and financial, Mr. Speaker. That is what the past administration, going back to the 70s, were not able to do. A dream, but a dream, as I said before, let me reiterate for emphasis, also manifests sacrifice, hard work. And sacrifice, Mr. Speaker, is manifested over a period of time, consistency, determination, Mr. Speaker, and leadership, Mr. Speaker. And that is what was lacking before, Mr. Speaker. So, what we did, I want to go back, even before 2012, when the test was done, and a production well done. In the early 2000s, we did the research in the catchment area, in the valley, to find out whether the potential existed. Let me say it again, having done that, having found out that the potential existed, we went further, Mr. Speaker, to do the test wells in order to establish, Mr. Speaker, the quality and the quantum of that resource. Deep thinking, planning, leadership, those virtues were lacking before in every single administration who spoke and dreamt about geothermal before the Labour Party under Roosevelt's cabinet, Mr. Speaker. That is what we're talking about. Not just simply just coming there, Mr. Speaker, and talking about seeking a loan, but it's the planning, the consistency, and the end result that we are going to reap, Mr. Speaker. Cheaper energy for us in Dominica, and to encourage, Mr. Speaker, business, and to make us even more comfortable within our households, because ultimately you're going to have cheap, lower cost of energy, Mr. Speaker. So you're not going to just give away a child, as you're professing to do, and let leave it and go. You should be charged for child maintenance, Mr. Speaker. That's what you're proposing, Mr. Speaker. And look at what we did further, Mr. Speaker. A lot of money have been spent, you know. A lot of money have been spent. And you're going to hear from Dr. Anderson just now, who I want this honorable House to acknowledge his contribution, and that of the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker. He has to be commended for that. He could be somewhere else, living his selfish life, Mr. Speaker. He has toiled, and he's seen this thing to an end. Not many of us in this country have started a significant project that will transform the economy, who have seen it from start to finish. And he will, Mr. Speaker. That is leadership. So we spent, Mr. Speaker, for the test wells, $31.7 million. The test wells. And we have to pay for the supervision for the drilling process, Mr. Speaker, $25.9 million in 2012. Road access, Mr. Speaker, to the pads, $5.7 million, Mr. Speaker. We're not so simply just coming there asking for money. It has been a project that has been conceptualized by Labour and manifesting itself from start to finish, Mr. Speaker. And then, Mr. Speaker, we also did a production well. $17.5 million was spent for the production well. And when we tested it, you know the quantum of the power? 11.4 megawatts, Mr. Speaker. So what we have done, Mr. Speaker, and then we did a reinjection well, but there were issues with doing the reinjection well. All these things that we have done as a responsible government, transforming a dream into reality. I hear a lot of us talking about nothing's happening in geothermal, but you have to understand the process. It is tough, it is hard, but we never abandon ship because of a safe and serious leadership, Mr. Speaker, and consistency, Mr. Speaker. Having a dream is one thing, but to work towards achieving the dream and have to be consistent. You know, and Mr. Speaker, what that has allowed us to do over the years, this production well, is to provide us with the opportunity to study and to develop more technical information and to further inform us as to the way forward. That is why now we are ready, Mr. Speaker, and we have spent twice that amount of money I just referred to under his leadership and that of the Prime Minister and the Dominica Labour Party. So you can't just build a production well. Now we are taking the power to one of our main distribution centers. And it goes back again to thinking. Now he spoke. Now, let us suppose, Mr. Speaker, hypothetically, Dominica was not owned by the government. And the consequential impact of having to negotiate agreements and stuff. With the same activity that we are proposing to do now, that we are not proposing, we shall be doing now. The lines that we're going to put in, let us suppose, again, so the government sat down and decided to acquire Dominica would have been in the best national interest of this country, bearing in mind our plans for the development of geothermal energy, Mr. Speaker. That is what leadership is all about. So you have to sit down and take notes as to what good leadership is all about. So all the folks are talking in their mouths there and talking nonsense. They have not run anything in their life yet. The only thing they have run, and they'll continue to run, their mouths. That's what according to Hunter, la 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 la. That's all. But leadership in a small and difficult economy like Dominica calls for patience, tolerance, and creativity, Mr. Speaker. That is what we have now. And that is why member from Marigot, let me tell you, no pulpos on you, but I like to look for it. We are not leaving that child behind. But we're taking the child to the finish line so that child can contribute towards our sustainable development as a people, Mr. Speaker. I support this measure. I want to commend the Labour Party administration for its leadership in that. And let's go back to Costa Rica, where about 14% of the energy comes from geothermal. And you find out how long it took them to get to that point. And so we are getting there, and we shall get there. And that's measured before this honorable House. It's a demonstration, Mr. Speaker. After all those dreams we have had before, most of us on that side, excluding myself and Dr. Mark, were born. The dream is coming to a reality. The geothermal energy is coming to a reality because of labor, because of leadership, because of consistency, Mr. Speaker. And we shall not turn back on geothermal, because turning back on geothermal, Mr. Speaker, is tantamount to turning back on Dominica, Mr. Speaker. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Senator Paris, you may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, other members of Parliament, good afternoon. I stand to make some brief remarks on the resolution currently before the House. Mr. Speaker, a lot has been said, and there's been plenty of debate on the development of Dominica's geothermal potential. I don't think we need to go back into the weeds of whether it is a good idea or not. We passed that stage. Geothermal is good. It's the most sustainable, or one of the most sustainable renewable resources that any country that is fortunate enough to have the ability to tap into can actually get. And Mr. Speaker, quite honestly, I think some congratulations are in order. Because if we can do this right, if we really get it right the first time, we will see geothermal power in Dominica. It will happen. The eyes will have it. While I'm saying that, I want to join the rest of the parliamentarians in congratulating member for, wait, you're the member for Granby, but you're a constituent of St. Joseph. I don't want to mix it up. But Dr. Vincent, I want to congratulate him. Mr. Speaker, that's not funny. I just wanted to be clear. I don't want to mix him up because I hear somebody claiming him and so on. But, Mr. Speaker, he has been one of the most consistent voice on this issue. I think he's done a lot of work in the area. Consistently, he has mentioned earlier in the supplementary debate that he himself has grown in the process. And, you know, congratulations. And we look forward to the reduction in power that has been promised throughout this process. I think that's one of the big ticket items that Dominicans are concerned about. You know, some people talking about what can happen. And I think many Dominicans, majority of Dominicans are concerned about how this is going to be transformative for the development of Dominica once we can get a reduction in the cost of energy. I have not seen the analysis. I'm sure Dr. Vince has. And it will be good to see what the analysis looks like that proves or that gives us a reasonable indication that once we flick the switch, there's going to be a reduction in the cost of energy to the ordinary consumer. Mr. Speaker, last time we were here and we spoke about geothermal, there were a number of recommendations that we made, and I would like to revisit, with your indulgence, I would like to revisit a number of them. Mr. Speaker, before I go any further, I beg your indulgence to refer to my notes from time to time.
Yes, permission granted.
Thank you very much. The first recommendation that I would like to revisit, because obviously a lot of people are talking about why we're taking loans and so on and so forth, and that is a concern. It's a fair concern, Mr. Speaker, given our debt to GDP ratio, etc., etc. One of the recommendations that we made was to relook at the possibility of using proceeds from the CBI, or buoyant CBI program, to do that. I heard a few numbers that the Senator Blackmore mentioned a while ago, and compared to what we've been able to do with CBI, that could have been a walk in the park. I don't think anybody thinks it's unfair for there to be a reasonable recommendation or question as to why we are not considering proceeds from our CBI to do this project. I mean, the minority will have its say, the majority will have its way, and the resolution will be passed today. So obviously we're going to go a different way. But it's worth mentioning that maybe we would not have had the concern about adding now today to our debt to GDP ratio. Not that it is unnecessary, but maybe we could have gone a different way. Second recommendation that I want to point out, Mr. Speaker, is there's a lot of talk about Dominica. We mentioned relooking at Dominic's role, or challenging them to play a bigger role in this process. Maybe in tandem with the Dominica Geothermal Development Company. Finding a way to challenge them to grow. The Minister of Finance mentioned their limitations early on. But you have to find a way to let Dominic grow. Because if Dominic doesn't grow, it'll die. If it doesn't grow, it's going to die. This changing environment that is currently existing will force it either to die or to grow. But not only just the company, Mr. Speaker. What happens to the rest of the shareholders? How are we looking at how they play a role? Currently, a colleague mentioned it earlier, Dominic is largely, some people might want to call it a monopoly. But if you've done a thing well for 74 years, I think, they own their generation, their transmission, and that's what they do. They've been able to do it well up until Hurricane Maria. This changing environment, Dominic owns neither. They don't own generation, they don't own transmission. How then are we confident that Dominic is going to be able to buy power, sell it back to its consumers, maintain the lines, maintain the transmission network, the new transmission network, and still be able to provide power cheaper? Seems hard to understand. It seems hard to comprehend. And maybe that's my limitations, but we are fortunate because there are people on the other side who have the information. What happens to the Dominic investors who've invested in Dominic over years? What happens to them? How is Dominic going to be able to do all that and still provide dividends to its shareholders? I know they're minority, the government is majority, but it's worth taking a look at. It's worth evaluating. Some people have their life savings in this. I don't think it's something that we can ignore, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to add one recommendation to the list of recommendations, and that is in the area of mandating sustainable and meaningful local participation. Ensuring that there's a reasonable transfer of information and technology. A level of participation that would allow our locals to build capacity and to promote an equitable distribution of wealth. Now, somebody might ask why. But Mr. Speaker, it's obvious. But for those who have a difficulty understanding why that is important, allow me to elaborate and paint a picture for you. And it's one I'm sure you would understand and appreciate, Mr. Speaker, because after all, this is your field. Mr. Speaker, the loans that we're taking currently will be repaid by the children of Dominicans. Dominican truck drivers, plumbers, masons, carpenters, bus drivers, shopkeepers, vendors, draftsmen, engineers, architects, Dominican contractors. Mr. Speaker, if the environment now continues to be one where our local and indigenous talent continues to be marginalized and disenfranchised, our local talent won't be able to enjoy the level of wealth transfer that is currently happening in Dominica on some of our largest capital projects. And what does that result in? It results in a situation where these local contractors, artisans, vendors, they won't be able to enjoy the wealth transfer that will allow them to do simple things, Mr. Speaker, like buying land, buying shares in Domlec, maybe shares, if it ever becomes available, in the Dominica Geothermal Development Company. Land and assets that will help them to create generational wealth, wealth that they will pass down to their children, who will become contributing citizens to this country. Contributing citizens in what way? Paying taxes. Taxes that we're going to use to repay these loans. As favorable as they are, they must be repaid. And when these loans are getting repaid, by that time a lot of us won't be here. Mr. Speaker, if we continue, the same people that single-handedly, or maybe they join hands, and put this government in power, all right? And the minister mentioned how they have done it repeatedly. They are repeatedly being asked to fend for themselves.
Senator, I'm trying to get the relevance of all that.
Mr. Speaker, I'm giving you the relevance. The
No,
relevance.
no, you may proceed. I'm just highlighting it so if a member returns, and I need to give the person latitude to, but you may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, that wouldn't be new, but I thank you for your indulgence. Mr. Speaker, the reason it is a recommendation, the relevance of this, and I want you to get this. The recommendation is for us to take the opportunity in these loan agreements, in these funding arrangements, to ensure that our locals can participate. And participate in a way that allows them and their children later on to absorb and pay these loans. Because if they are not able to do it, Mr. Speaker, what then becomes of Dominica's future and the future of our young people? What happens to our social security, Mr. Speaker? In support of these loans, we are saying one of the recommendations is that we want a higher equitable level of local involvement, meaningful involvement, that allows people to participate in the information, technology, and wealth transfer that can happen for our people, so that we can pay these loans. There's a justification that allows us to pay these loans later. What happens to our social security if our people are not working? The IMF, the ECCB, continues to recommend that we improve on our tax administration because currently our tax revenues are unable to cover our expenditure. But if our people are not working and meaningfully engaged and getting involved in the cash flow that is happening here now, who are we going to tax? That is the relevance, Mr. Speaker. The relevance is that when we approve the loan, it has to be repaid with taxes. International agencies that we subscribe to are advising us to improve on our tax administration system. The recommendation is that we need to give our people more work, build up our private sector and our middle class to ensure that they can pay these taxes. Because if they're not there, who are we going to tax? Mr. Speaker, it's a scary situation, but we have time. We still have time. We have time to mandate an equitable, meaningful, sustainable level of local participation that will build capacity in our people through information, through technology, and through wealth. Wealth that will allow our people to create generational wealth and pass it down to their children. so that the burden of these taxes later on, they'll be fine with it. Because they will be able to be contributing citizens of this country to be able to manage and thrive and grow this country. Simply because we made the right decision of getting our people involved. Not just giving them structures, but getting them involved in the wealth transfer. Mr. Speaker, we speak of reparations for countries that have experienced genocide, slavery, and colonialism. Let us make sure that the decisions that we're making, we are not creating a situation where our children and our grandchildren will ask us for reparations because we used their resources badly and we sold their future unfairly to them and put them in a disadvantage. Mr. Speaker, members of the House, we have time. Dominicans are willing. They are hardworking, intelligent people, but they need access. They need their government to go to bat for them. There is wealth, there's information, there's technology that we can all benefit from now. Let us put our people first, because we still have time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Henderson, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my colleagues for being so involved in this item before us, that is the resolution to approve the loan for the construction of transmission lines from the Rosa Valley to Focally. Mr. Speaker, there are a number of questions that my colleagues from the other side raised, and some of them, I have to say, I must confess and perhaps even apologize, I got a bit animated because I don't know, my ability to listen to things that don't reflect the facts, they tend to get me pretty annoyed. I am working on that, but I don't know. And especially when people pick up things they hear people say and they don't have all the information. And then they come to an august body, according to my parrot, like this. It gets me a bit agitated. So, perhaps my good friend, member for Marigot, I think Senator Blackmore has responded to you adequately. I wouldn't go into that. But why do we need this? So I want to start by, just a little discussion. Why do we need a transmission line? Although I like to call it a transmission system, but my technical advisor likes to say lines. But I think it's because it's a system, because there are lines, but there are substations. Substations are what takes the voltage from one level, brings it to another level, makes it what you want it to be, what you need it to be, rather. So the transmission system that we're talking about, there are two main reasons why we need the transmission system. One, the Rosa Valley is the center of production for renewable energy in Dominica. Dominica is blessed, and we should not allow other people to make us abandon our blessing in pursuits of things that may seem more attractive. Right, Teacher Bonnie? Remember for Cassie Bruce? I said that right? But we are fortunate that the Rosa Valley is our center of production. Hydro. Don't forget hydro. Hydro is the cheapest source of power that we have on the grid. And it will be, even after geothermal is introduced. Because we've been investing in hydro. And by the way, just so you know, we've been pursuing utilizing hydro since 1951. So Dominica has tremendous experience, 70 plus years, pursuing hydro power. And improvements have been made over the years, especially in the 90s, when we expanded the system with 3, generation plants. So if a total of about 6.4 megawatts of power nameplate. We'd always get that because of the water levels and all the other factors to be taken into account. We already have power in the Rosa Valley. So even without geothermal, we need to get power to Focole in a very resilient transmission system. So we need that. Now, when we add geothermal to that 6.4 megawatts, we add in another 10 megawatts of power to take from the Rosa Valley to bring it to Focole. But before we do that, we are making a loop around the Rosa Valley. So we can connect the hydro to the geothermal, and then we take the power to Focole. Now, because we are going around the Rosa Valley before we go to Focole, we're actually talking about how many? 20 kilometers of line? That's a lot of line. That transmission system could get us to St. Joe at least. But we need to build resilience. Remember our commitment, and the Minister of Finance spoke about it this morning. So we're building redundancy to ensure that in the event we get hit, we can still have power to evacuate from the Rosa Valley, whether it's hydro or geothermal or both. But what we have also, so that is one of the fundamental reasons we need to have the greater capacity to bring the power, and secondly, we need to make it resilient. Now, that line should not be costing all that money if we're just building a line. But we're building a line that can withstand a Category 5 hurricane. That is what we're building. So don't forget, lose sight of the fact that we committed to build a resilient island state. And this is part of it. This is a significant component of it. Because if we're just going to build lines to carry the power, we could have lines that can carry higher voltage and just run them overhead the same way we've been doing for a long time. And that would maybe cost half the price or a third, because it costs about 2 to 3 times more to make lines resilient. In this case, we are undergrounding a significant part of the lines. And that is very important because, again, we are not just building a transmission line. We are building 10.7 kilometers, 33 kV. And let me pause there for a bit. So this morning, the Prime Minister told us, and he used a Chinese proverb, I won't repeat verbatim, but to the effect that we need roads to connect. You need roads for transactions. You need roads for commerce. You need roads to connect, villages with centers. So what is really happening here is that we need transmission lines. But Dominica, since we started having lights, remember there was a time we didn't have lights. I mean, some of you too young, you remember that. It's the other day people get light in bells, and I remember that because you remember they had the rural electrification program. You get lights in the south to certain parts. It's the other day people get lights, Don't forget that. But what have we done over these years, these decades, is that we've never built a transmission system. So this Labour Party is doing a lot of firsts in Dominica. A lot of firsts. So when you start talking about your child growing, taking money on the child, that's nonsense. The child does a first degree, they want to do a second degree, give them money, they want to do a second degree. That's what responsible, parents who can afford do. We would not get this loan if we were not able to afford it. So that is what you're missing, in all your analysis. It's a broke father that does more money. The child big, that's go and fend for yourself. But if you're in a position you can borrow, and you feel that you can assist your child, you help your child. That's what you do. But anyway, let's go back to the transmission systems. We never had transmission systems in Dominica. What we have is a bunch of distribution systems. So we have a lot of lines running along the place. The highest voltage being 11 kV, 11,000 volts. So that's what we have. You know those high voltage lines, when you grow up, they used to call them high tension wires? Actually, it's just high voltage. So these are small. Now, if we were to take 10 megawatts of geothermal power and try to bring it to Focole in those lines, it'll get so hot. They will lose so much power. By the time they get down to Focole, the power, you lost, significant percentage of that power. It will not be an efficient way to get the power to Focole. So we need to have higher voltage systems. And so in this case, we build in 33 kilovolts, 33,000 volts for one system. and then we're going to 69,000 volts to take all the power now to Focole from the Rosa Valley. And that's what we're asking Parliament to approve, to finance, because this is essential to get the power to Focole. Now, on a broader philosophical point, I see transmission lines, as the Prime Minister spoke of roads this morning, as the same. Except we don't, go flying on the transmission lines. We drive on roads. But in the sense that it's a public good. A road is a public good. We all use it equally. Nobody can tell us to pass on that part of the road, although some people claim in the sidewalk in Rosa, but anyway, that's a different matter. The Minister of National Security and those who have such responsibilities. But a public road is for public use. Transmission lines should be treated, and that is my thesis that I presented the other day in Abu Dhabi. Because I believe that countries now talking about renewable energy must talk about investments in transmission lines. So before I go to look at the details of the loan, I want to add a point that I started on this morning. But when I was just going down into it, I realized, wrong window. Like when you send in WhatsApp and you send the wrong person message. Yeah, I was actually saying what I wanted to say for this item this morning. So I was telling you this morning when we went to Barbados in 2012 for sustainable energy for all. Countries came up with much ambitions, and we were there saying we're going to have 100% renewable energy by 2020, Minister Blackmore, at the time. And the other member states, about 40 other small island states, we all had ambitions that were over 50% by 2020. All of us. But here's the thing we found out. I found it out a few years later because by that time I started doing interviews for a research paper. And I came across a civil engineer in Cape Verde. We had gone there to do a session on smart grids, smart transmission systems, smart grids. And he told me, but by the way, all these commitments you've given, if you're depending on wind and solar, you actually will not be able to do that because the systems that you have can only take about 20% of the power from wind and solar. They are not smart, they're not new, and they cannot take all these intermittent sources of power without significant storage and backup from diesel generators. I was like, whoa. So I realized what. So then, moving along, we started doing research and we started doing what we call integrated resource and resilient plans for island states, looking at their renewable energy sources and what they need in order to meet their targets. So we found out that you need battery storage systems. And we found out that you need smart grids, modern grids. And then we found out that the majority of islands, even in the region, have not built a transmission system in the last 40 years. So Dominica is ahead. This is just one component, albeit, but we're the only country in the region to have a serious investment in a transmission system in recent times that will be able to be a modern transmission system on the ground and smart. And I'm talking about the independent member states in the Caribbean, CARICOM particularly, because we have seen some work done in the BVI with significant undergrounding. St. Martin has tremendous undergrounding. That's why they're able to respond so quickly after the passage of a major hurricane. The same thing in Turks and Caicos, Bermuda, and all of these British territories as well. They have those systems. But what we've seen in our neighborhood as well is that some of our neighbors who've decided to go green and to include more wind and solar, like Guadeloupe and Martinique, that their national grid, the entire system, so the national grid is the whole thing, have collapsed because their grid cannot respond quickly to the vagaries of the intermittent sources. Cloud cover, no power, high power. There's another member state in the region that had a recent blackout last year, total blackout, because of the same thing. So we are making this investment to ensure that we not only have a system that is efficient to carry the power from the Rosa Valley, but it would be an opportunity to start building that kind of smart grid that if we determine eventually that we want to add intermittent sources, we will be in a better position because we'll have a more modern system. And in addition to that, we are now investing in a 6 megawatts battery storage system at Fokole. It's connected to what we're doing here in geothermal, but it is generally for the grid. It means that DOMLEC will be able to, and member for representing Fokole said that this morning, she was elated, that we can get rid of some of the noisy generators. Most, if not all. The intention is to get rid of all. Because being able to bring the 10 megawatts of hydro to Fokole, we will be able to connect our 6 megawatt battery into the DOMLEC system, and that battery will be there to displace some generators that would have to always be running in the event you need extra power. So if your system trips, one of them would kick up. That battery would allow us to have power for a period of time that will allow DOMLEC to respond quickly to the problem that they may have so that we can get rid of diesel. It means effectively that we'll be reducing the cost of electricity. And I said that last time. But I heard the Senator Parris was asking for analysis. I did some back of the envelope analysis for you last time. As I told you, I was not going to sign behind it because I think it is in the purview of the IRC and DOMLEC to make those public. But I gave you the analysis that would be representative of what will actually happen, because we will be shutting down diesel generators. So already your fuel surcharge will be shut down. We're talking about 70% of our peak demand that we'll be bringing on the grid for geothermal. When you add to that hydro, well, about 60%, sorry. When you add to that hydro, we are looking at a system with almost 70 to 80% of renewables. So Dominica will be closer to meeting its target, although we're not doing this just for target. We're doing this to ensure that we can make electricity cheaper to our people. We can build a system that is more resilient to the impact of climate change. And to overall look at a benefit that goes beyond energy, but goes into development, growth, and and further the wider economy. And this is what we're looking about. So this investment that we're making now for 100 million EC dollars, 103 million EC dollars, for that transmission system, will put us in a position for future growth. So when we expand geothermal capacity in the Roseau Valley, we don't have to build another transmission line. So that is an investment. Oh, by the way, those things last for like 50 years. So we're making a serious investment there. If you have to calculate it annually, it's really not much. First of all, you have 40 years to repay. 40 years, 10 years grace period, you don't pay anything. So thankfully your daughter will leave high school by that time. Nothing for 10 years. And then we start paying for 30 years. It is not usual to get that kind of 40-year period from the World Bank. And it is because of Dominica's position, its relationship, its standing with the World Bank, that we're able to attract those terms. So we're looking at an investment that will go on for a long time. And an investment that we will have more than just 10 megawatts on in the future, or 16 with hydro. So if we decide we see an opportunity to expand hydro, if we see, and not if we see, because we are already, as I've said here before, the development of the well pads in Loda are designed to take 4 wells each. So in other words, we can multiply what we have in Loda by a factor of 4. That is what we're talking about. So you say, all the money there, but that is the initial cost. And you know how much money it costs the US government to develop nuclear energy? Sometimes we come here, we just say all kinds of things, that we think the world just happened, things just happen, America developed, or people going on plane, people like plenty light in New York. You think these things just happen? Governments invested in those things, The little phone you have there, you know how much things fellas spend in lab and how much money the US government was giving to universities and research institutes to develop those things? That is how these things work until they get to commercial. Till they get to a stage where you can put them to the industry so private sector can take it. But you're right about one thing. If this project's so good, why we not bring in private sector? I don't know, boys, but I think Minister Blackmore made the point. If we do it so, you say no. If you do it so, you say no. So it doesn't make a difference. Because it's OMAD that's building the plant. We did not come to ask for money to build the plant. The project speaks for itself. The credibility is so high. The credibility of the government is so high that we got the best geothermal company in the world to come to Dominica and sign a contract for a project that they find is so small, it's an annoyance to them, to be honest. 10 megawatts is nothing. 10 megawatts is a joke. When you sit, so I was sitting on a panel with Kenya on one side, Ethiopia on the other side, the US there, and the EU, and when you start talking, it might be 10 megawatts. So I shall say, I don't say in 10 megawatts. I shall say, yeah, about 55% of our electricity generation will be coming from geothermal. 55%. Because when Kenya start talking about gigawatts of power, in Kairaku, the fellas have gigawatts of power of geothermal. 100 megawatts is a typical project for them. So for OMAD to come to Dominica to do a 10 megawatt plant, that is serious confidence. But I see what they see. What they see is an opportunity for expansion, an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for development. And that's why we cannot stop ourselves at Fokole, my brother. You want us to get to Wesley, you want us to get to the airport. Why you want to stop us at Fokole? This is like a road. We need to connect the power. No, we can use distributed generation, we can use solar and wind from time to time in place to place, but baseload power 24/7, always there, always ready, has to be geothermal. And we cannot waste that opportunity and not bring the power to Wesley. This is the conversation we should be having. We're going to develop this country. We're going to finish the hotels. You have the Hilton in Salisbury. You would love to see that, leader of the opposition, open. Imagine 100 young people from your community and older people as well, employed at that hotel. And then you go down the road and we have the Anichi Hotel. When that is completed, then we have the Moroccan Finance Hotel. You will look at the expansion of the how we call the American Canadian Medical School. We're going down to look at a marina that will require power because the rule will be such that once you get to dock, you must connect power. And that is cheaper, cleaner power. That has to be the rule. So that you're forcing now those yachts to buy power from you. So there are opportunities for expansion, for growth. And then when you get to you make the wrong, you get to the airport, then you're going to build an airport hotel by you there. Somewhere in Marigot, maybe all Kayamboki might decide to build something there. So we, you're looking at the opportunities for the growth and development. And I'm saying this because we cannot sell ourselves short. We need to think big. We need to think of the transformation that we can have. When we start talking about agro-processing, we start talking about aquaculture, hydroponics. These things need power. They need energy. And if we're going to go in any large scale, we will need power. And then, here is the icing on it. We can now say truly 100% renewable power. Production from 100% renewable power. That's not just bragging rights, that can be monetized in the international community. So we need to see this as a major piece of infrastructure. But as I say, this should be seen as a public good. A public good that has to be financed by the people. And I agree with you, and I maybe not agree with the dots you try to connect, Senator Paris. But yes, indeed, it should be the taxpayers who pay and not the ratepayers. There should be a distinction because this should be treated like any road. We don't have toll roads in Dominica. In the US, you have toll roads. In Canada, you have toll roads where you don't have toll roads in Dominica. So the same way we don't pay.
7 more minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, before I conclude, I want to respond to a few things, but it'll also give me the opportunity to clarify or to continue some points that I wanted to raise. But I will start by this. What happens with DOMLEC? How does this work? So a few years ago, when we first conceptualized the transmission system project, I remember we decided that we need, well, first I should say the conditionalities of the World Bank are such that the transmission system will always belong to the people of Dominica. It belongs to the government on the behalf of the people of Dominica. So the transmission system cannot be sold, cannot be transferred. But we can allow, in this case, DOMLEC, to manage it for us. So the arrangement is a unique sort of legal arrangement that we came up with a list. We call it an omelette. I think we came up with a name, but it is really an operational list so that DOMLEC will be leased the line, but they will be responsible for operating and maintaining it. So that is what we came up with. We have prepared the framework for that. We had the legal documents written up. DOMLEC agreed on where the obligations lie and where ours will lie. Who will be responsible for ensuring, maintaining, and so forth. So we have put that in place. DOMLEC will also not benefit unduly from this infrastructure. So in other words, they cannot charge users or consumers for that, but they will have to cover their operation and maintenance costs, but nothing additional. That will be vetted by the IRC to ensure, in fact, that this is what is happening. But the question, very important question, came up about the future of DOMLEC and the lack of, not distribution, they will always have, not will always have, but they have a monopoly on distribution and transmission for 25 years. This list will also, on the construction of the plant, will also extend their licenses to ensure that they have enough time to manage that asset for us. So they have a monopoly in it. What it will affect is their generation capacity. And that is something that we have taken into consideration a very long time ago. We've had a lot of discussions on that, and I mentioned that last time in the Parliament. But it will, in fact, affect their generation capacity. So we need to have some conversations around that. This is why the preference has always been to train the operators on the diesel generators for geothermal so that they can find employment there as we do generation there. Albeit it will be less, should I say, manual. It's more automated. The geothermal plant is more automated than perhaps what our operators do at DOMLEC, but that is a discussion we're having. With regards to how we treat with shareholders, well, the point about business plan, I think one of my colleagues, Minister Defoe, explained that very well. I don't think we need to go through all that discussion about business plan and project plan. That thing has gone through the strongest of scrutinies from social and environmental impact assessment to the actual operationalization of the arrangement between government and DOMLEC, and also obviously the ability of the government to repay. That is not being questioned. The shareholders, again, it's an asset that DOMLEC will be managing. They will be paid to manage the asset, and therefore this will have no impact on them one way or the other. It will just be more work, but they will be paid for that work. So in other words, they will recover the operation and maintenance costs, which is very small really when you look at it, but they will be compensated for that. So that is something that is well taken account of. Now, again, I think I have responded to most of these points, and I'm not sure if there's anything else that I can add to the discussion, but except to say that earlier this year, we went to tender. We went to tender, and we received tenders from 3 companies. One was disqualified. The 2 others were qualified from a technical standpoint, and their bids are being reviewed. We expect by the end of the month to have some news, but I won't put any pressure on the team looking at this, but we need to move as quickly as possible. It is also important to note that before we decided on this transmission system, we had the benefit of a study by Tractebel. Tractebel is a French consultancy. They looked at the entire system for us after Hurricane Maria and came up with recommendations to build a resilient transmission system. We were guided by that, but later on we were able to bring in Sofreco, which is an engineering company, another French company, and they were able to look at the entire system, did the design, and with the involvement of the World Bank and their own efforts, were able to see, to finalize the designs for the transmission system. We expect that once a contract is awarded, it will take 18 months to do the first segment of this line and 30 months for completion of the entire transmission system, having looped around the valley and connecting to Focole. Our priority, however, is to get the power to Focole. We must get that there as quickly as possible and preferably before the first quarter of 2026. We are looking at an alternative, ensuring that we can connect the East Coast feeder so that in the event that we are not able to get ready for the geothermal power, we can have another source of distribution to go through the East Coast and to utilize the power there as well as we can ensure that. So we are moving on, and I want to once again take the opportunity to thank Prime Minister Skerrit and my colleagues for the support that you continue to give to geothermal. This is a national project. This is a project with great potential to transform Dominica if done well, and I believe we are on course to doing it well. There are lessons will be learned that we've learned along the way, and as far as local content is concerned, as you will recall, our drill pads were all done by ACE Engineering. We know that ACE Engineering and other local companies are also in partnership with the companies that have tendered on the transmission system. And therefore, there will be, again, local content in that. Obviously, there was a tender process. If you knew of any Dominican firm that had the capacity to build 69 kV lines, they would have been welcome to apply. But we recognize that there has to be a partnership. And that partnership
one more minute.
is really alive and well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And we're looking forward to the construction of the transmission system. Thank you very much.
Yes, Honorable Prime Minister, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Honorable Speaker. The interest rate or the terms for this loan is 0.75% per annum. The commitment charge of 0.5%, half of 1% per annum. Repayment 60 semi-annual installments commencing May 15, 2034, and a grace period of 10 years. I do not believe that one can get those terms anywhere else in the world, Mr. Speaker. Anywhere else in the world. And I think these are good terms for the loan. Outside of that would be a grant. I have taken notes of some of the comments made, and of course, the Minister for Energy, Dr. Henderson, has responded to, I believe, all of them. But you know, sometimes we in Dominica, we say there's no foreign investment. No foreign investment. We're the investors. And then when the investors come, we say, why do we need these people to come in Dominica to invest? Why not somebody else? The reality is, OMAT is bringing monies from out of Dominica into Dominica to build the geothermal plant. If you do not have them to invest, and the government were to own the plant and to build the plant, it means therefore I would have to be here for another loan to build the plant. And more than likely, a plant like that would require to get commercial rates. because institutions will not recognize it as a public good. It be seen as a commercial investment. So you're talking about 10 and 12 and 15%. When you take all of the other variables added to the terms. So we welcome the investments and the technology that they're bringing in to Dominica. The know-how and the capacity they're bringing to Dominica. That will allow us to have the geothermal plant and allow us to have access and benefit from cheaper energy. That's the ultimate goal. And with that ultimate goal of cheaper energy spurs a number of things. More investments, especially in agro-processing. The hotels will be cheaper to run. And therefore, a better and bigger return for the investors who can now reinvest and expand and build bigger properties and or investment in other areas of endeavor. With the move by the Ministry of Agriculture, the government to move into more use of technology in agriculture, we're going to see some benefits in there. There are many parts of Dominica where you need electricity or energy to power the water systems. Domlec, 24/7. They can't turn it off because you will get water at your homes. So one can appreciate the multiplicity of benefits that this investment will bring into our country. And they speak about Domlec, what's going to happen to Domlec. And it was fortuitous that we went ahead as a government and acquired the majority shares in Domlec. Because this has placed the country in a better position to advance this very important geothermal project. There's no way Domlec in its previous, present or future circumstance will be able to get this loan of $103 million to invest just in the transmission system. So when you talk about what is the impact of investors, what will happen is that the majority shareholder, if Dominic will take a loan, would have to make a contribution commensurate with its investment capacity in there. The other shareholders may not be able to do so, and therefore the government share would increase. And the other shareholders, their shareholdership would decrease. And so by the approach that this government is taking, we are securing the investments that locals have made and continue made, and the shareholders in Dominic. So this whole geothermal project, as intricate as it has been, we have been very mindful of how we approach this. This is why we have always said we go after grant funding, as we did in many instances, using our local resources, and in fact we have used CBI funds into the geothermal plant. And if we'll take a load, it has to be highly concessionary rates. This is why we're here, for this load. So there's no Domlec, even if Domlec would want to invest in the transmission line, it won't be able to afford it. And the point on sale of shares in the Dominican Geothermal Development Company, at some point we'll put the shares to the Dominican public. So at some point it will come. But we always felt that we needed to start the project, have energy coming in there, because in no sense we sell the shares to people and you don't have the geothermal plant operational and you're selling energy. So, Mr. Senator Paris, put your money aside to buy the shares that you're talking about. And Dr. Henderson has responded to your point about local content. I find it sometimes people benefit from these projects the government has. They remain quiet. They don't say anything. They collect the millions from it. And then they sit there and allow people to say that they're not benefiting. And not stand up and say, well, no, sir, that's not true. Yes, we could get more, but don't say we're not getting something. So far, the majority of money that we have spent on geothermal has gone to local companies. And even in this transmission line, obviously, Mr. Senator Paris, you should know. And if you do not know, it's not making a statement, you ask a question. That when you get money from these international financial institutions, they have their procurement rules. They have the pre-qualification requirements. And it's not because you are a company that you cannot bid. No. There are requirements. This is why you will have people applying. It's just like a job. A job requires X. If you do not X and you apply, you'll never get an interview. But if you have what it takes to, the financials that you require, the number of years of existence as a company, projects that you have done, your human resources, your skill set at your disposal, there are a number of variables that one has to meet. So what local companies do sometimes, in many of these projects that you think is only international companies have it, is that there is a relationship. There is a relationship. And in most of these cases, what these international companies do is just send a few engineers down, but the bulk of the work is done by local people, by local companies. Because that local company doesn't have the capacity to tender for the project, but they can be the subcontractor. They can be a subcontractor. And a number of these big projects we have, that's what happens in many of these instances. Where they don't qualify, they join forces. And they're able to benefit from this. And so it's a matter for us, Center Parish, to position ourselves always. And even in here in Dominica, sometimes I find that local contractors don't join forces enough. Instead of each of us having a little construction company, why can't you have a big national construction company in the private sector? To give us the capacity to be able to tender for a $100 million project from the World Bank. That would help. We form a company, we can have our individual companies, and we share the profit on a big project. That's what happened. It has happened in some cases, a couple of projects here. It happened. Local companies joined forces on this particular project. So these are the things that we need to look at doing. But one cannot, Mr. Speaker, underestimate the value and the importance of us pursuing it. I will be the first, Mr. Speaker, to tell you why this has been long. And how much money we spend on this geothermal. But I believe ultimately, the people of Dominica will see the benefits of renewable energy, geothermal energy in Dominica. And that is what this is like our march to build an international airport for way back during the DUPP days of Frank Barron. We spoke of an international airport. And every successive government from Frank Barron, Libla, going to Patrick John, all of them have spoken about international airport. Frank Barron started the Melbourne Airport, Libla finished it. And we came and we said, ultimately we want to build an international airport. But in the short to medium term, we shall introduce night landing in Dominica. The reality is, night landing should have never taken so long to be introduced in Dominica. This should have been done in the 80s and the 90s. Because by then we would have had created the capacity and the demand long before that. But now we build international airport. And so, while we would have preferred not to be here to take a loan to build a transmission line, but the reality is, it is absolutely necessary that we do. And the terms, you cannot escape the terms. Because if you do not do that transmission system, Mr. Speaker, as Dr. Henderson has indicated, then it makes no sense investing in geothermal. Because you won't be able to get it from the point of generation to the point of distribution in terms of the amount that you have flowing from this, because the old system cannot withstand or sustain it. And even before the geothermal, we've been talking about changing the transmission lines in Dominica, you know. Long of the line losses, and the line losses are passed on to the consumers. Heavy line losses are passed on to your consumer bill, to your Dominic bill for years. For years. But this was an expensive undertaking that Domlec in its capacity, whether it was owned by a private company or it's owned by government now, as much merger of the shares would not have been able to afford it. Because every investment Domlec would have made, Senator Paris, you will pay for it. I would pay for it. The hotels will pay for it because they'll pass on the cost to you. We are seeking as a government that the investments we're making by way of financial investments in the geothermal are not all passed on to the consumers. And this is why we're going about it a very deliberate, very sensitive and sensible and smart way of getting this geothermal project going. I will be first to say to you, Mr. Senator Paris and member of Marigot, that we believe that the international community should have been really the ones underwriting this investment to us by way of a grant. By way of a grant. But the reality is, there are many things that we have to do by ourselves and for ourselves. And if we're to wait for this grant to come, then it will be the 44 years when we're starting to repay. Starting to repay. So I would say to the Domlec shareholders that they're in a better position to maintain their shareholdership, the current shareholdership in Domlec, than if we'd allow Domlec to be one to underwrite that investment. Because each shareholder would have to contribute the proportionality of their shares. And if you don't, if Domlec increases share capital, and you don't buy more shares, put more money to buy to maintain your circumstance, you have a problem. This is what we had in National Bank. We don't want to own 60 or 70% National Bank. As a matter of fact, I instructed Minister of Finance to sell shares to the public soon from the National Bank and go back to the 49% or the 50%. And so the current shareholders will maintain their shareholdership in Domlec by this investment. Mr. Speaker, I want to say to us that there are some things we have to keep fighting on with, notwithstanding the drawbacks and the setbacks. But I think, all things considered, we are closer to the end of the road where geothermal is concerned. It has been a long journey, the OAS doing the study for us and having several engagements. Vincent Knight, the Minister of Energy, traveling to Paris a couple of times to speak to shareholders, to save the investment interest in this company, speaking to Agence Française de Développement to negotiate for some grants and for some loans to invest and so on. It has been a journey. But a journey that's worth it, and I believe, Mr. Speaker, with this loan, we are at the end of it. We are at the end of it. The tender went out, bids are in. And OMAT now is itself engaging in its own procurement processes so that both can start at the same time and end at the same time. So that once the geothermal plant is constructed, the transmission lines will be in place, and voila. And the reality is, Mr. Speaker, if we had money, if we had the money that's required, we would not be here talking about 10 megawatts, you know. Because we're ready to talk about 20 or 30 megawatt plant. Because we have to anticipate. We are anticipating the demand, the increased demand. With all of the investments we're making in Dominica. All of the investments we're making in Dominica. Because all of those investments we're making are going to be heavy consumers of energy. And we cannot be in a situation where we have issues of load shedding. And so, yes, we're doing the first 10 megawatt plant, but there's capacity for more. And we're positioning ourselves with these transmission lines for that expectation of more. And we will see how we can engage OMAT to see how they can even increase as the demand goes within that 25 years. So it's not a static situation of 10 megawatts, no. We're starting at 10. Remember there was 7, we moved to 10. And we're moving ahead with that, Mr. Speaker. And we're confident, by the grace of God, we will see those investments. So we're at the end of the road. We're at the end of the road. The baby has been born, for Marigold. But we have to take care of the baby. And walk the baby to school, the child to school, etc., etc. And celebrate his or her birthdays. And we'll be back here to celebrate the turning on the lights from Geothermal in Dominica after a long journey of perseverance and determination. And that, I want to speak about what is government's plan and economic plan and social plan for Dominica. We've always spoken about this in a comprehensive, structured manner of energy, air access, improvement to infrastructure, ensuring that every child has opportunity at school and education, improve healthcare by building up new facilities, training more doctors, introducing more and advanced equipment. What we have to improve in Dominica, all of us, is our attitude towards each other, our attitude towards our job and our responsibilities. And I believe if we were to address this, the country is sweeter rather. Sweeter. And let us have a more positive outlook of ourselves and our country. Because there are some who believe that over there is greener pastures and so forth. There are no greener pastures anywhere in this world. Maybe more opportunities in some areas than other areas. But there are children in America who were born in America who have to drop out of school because they cannot pay their student loans. Yeah, thousands, hundreds of thousands of young American children who can't go to school because they can't access additional loans. And there are thousands of Dominicans who we have trained who do not owe the bank $1. Because we understand the importance of education, Mr. Speaker. I want to finally place on record again my appreciation and gratitude to Minister Henderson for his leadership where geothermal is concerned and for his consistent efforts over the years. I want to thank Mr. Fred John. Many people don't know him because if you see him, you don't know him. He's more in the background. But an extraordinary Dominican with tremendous capacity. This is the guy who was in America enjoying his life and so forth, I believe, and decided to come back to Dominica to share with Dominica his knowledge and the skills that he acquired over there. So we're prepared to engage Dominicans in diaspora who are prepared to come to Dominica to live and to work. We have Mr. Samuel Johnson, who is the CEO of International Airport Development Company. So we have people who are here. Mr. Case of the IRC, Dominican guy working, advising the government on the regulation of rates. And on the geothermal plant, if you go there, you'll meet a gentleman, Mr. Ilwa from La Plaine. These are the people who are going to be running the plants and providing the advice and the guidance. So we're prepared to engage any Dominican who's prepared to come to Dominica to work and to make a contribution. And so I salute who's sitting there. Maybe, sir, I would allow you to stand, you know, so people can see you. Let the camera capture you. The few keyboard junkies and want Facebook and so on who have 15, the same person with 15 names and so forth. These are the people, these are the real people. The real serious, constructive people who don't hear, but they do so many positive things with Dominica. We have some people, Dominica this, Dominica that, Dominica this, they go and they show a pothole, but they won't show you $127 million within the East. Negative. But thank God we have more positive people around in this country who are working to build this country. Working to build this country. And I look forward to us working together towards continuing building the country. And we take note of all the points. I must be, you guys are nice people. I don't know what you guys decide there, you know. No, you're okay. You guys okay. Two of you okay. They're going to go outside. You know what I'm saying? But, Mr. Speaker, like this, all of us, we can say what would do this $150 million. Many people, I see parlors when you say, boy, I could use one in the constituency. Yeah, boy, scary boy, Vince boy, show boy, you're going to take a 50 and give us a 500. No. But this is something that will benefit every single village, every single house, every single person in Dominica, no matter where in Dominica you reside, Mr. Speaker. And finally, I have some news for us in Dominica. That another major project that only labor can deliver, and only labor will deliver, we'll have a groundbreaking ceremony by the grace of God on May 25th. It's a Saturday for the groundbreaking ceremony of the marina in Portsmouth. And let me tell you, Shakira, I already started looking at your constituency for marina, you know, down south there. So we started discussing that already. Something, not something happening, some things happening in Dominica. Some things happening in Dominica. Notwithstanding the challenges we face, Mr. Speaker, we're looking at big ticket items that once they're completed, the little problems, the little challenges you have will go away. Just like a 5-burner stove, but 4 working. That's what it is. Big things. The next big things you will have is the cruise ship village and the new port that will be placed in at Canefield Industrial Site. And so when we get these things, the marina, the international airport, geothermal coming in there, Mr. Speaker, you have the cruise ship village, you have the new cargo port with the technology, modern technology that you require. And all of these hotels that we're building finally open. All we need is for us to work together. We may not always agree, but let's work together. Let us be positive, let's be constructive. Let's not seek to undermine this country's efforts. Because at the end of the day, as we recognize, when a storm comes, everybody was affected. Everybody. And therefore, when these investments come to fruition, and they will by the grace of God, all of us will benefit. Let's not preoccupy ourselves who is doing it. No, let's not preoccupy ourselves who is doing it. Somebody has to do it. But let's all play our part in getting it done eventually, so that we can all benefit from this, Mr. Speaker. This is a great day for Dominica. It's a great day for energy revolution in Dominica, and we're leading the way. People are referencing Dominica when we talk about geothermal. They want to come and see what we're doing, and they come in to see what we're doing. This has become a major attraction in itself. You have to stop people going because it's a construction site, and everybody can go there. People come in to look at it because they can't understand how a small country like this, that is so vulnerable to external shocks and natural disasters, is so ambitious. Similar to when we went a few days after the hurricane at the United Nations and declared that we were going to be the world's first climate resilient nation in the world. We have to think big. We have to think big. This is why I'm challenging young professionals in Dominica. Let's not engage ourselves in negativism. The Lord has given you a qualification. It's an investment. Use it. There's money in the bank. The bank and the credit unions do not know what to do with money. They're liquid. Take a loan. Build a house, live upstairs, build downstairs for Airbnb. Use the money. Let us prioritize, let's structure our lives and use it. Let's invest. We have to be careful. We see, and we welcome them. Scores of non-nationals come into Dominica and buy properties and build homes. We welcome them. And I want more of them to come. But we, as Dominicans, must position ourselves to hold on a piece of the patrimony. And this is why we're pushing the government side to make these lots available in Canefield East and Hillsborough Garden and Platma Pier in Collio and in Cotton Hill in Portsmouth, ensuring that we create and gym it more lots for local Dominicans to purchase water. So my advice to us is to position ourselves and to buy this lot from the government. Will be sold at a concessionary rate, and immediately after to build on this and rent downstairs and you're living upstairs. It's not going to be your dream home, but look at it as an investment. And when the Lord bless you with a return from this, you can build your dream home eventually. And so that's our challenge to all of us. And so let Mr. Speaker, really, and look, the rain is falling, blessings on this. Good sign when rain falls. Good sign. And I see the member for Solvay saying, you're scared, I agree with you, Mr. I agree with you, yes. Labour got 12, I'm scared. I agree with you. She's trying to tell me scared. I can't say it publicly, but you can see the expression on my face. And don't even talk about people from America, but I'm Mr. Labour man there. Mr. Speaker. But we're happy. Yeah. Thank you. God bless. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I stand to wind up the debate on the authorization for credit facility from the International Development Association to finance the development of a new electricity transmission network. With all the deliberations that have gone on so far, there really isn't much more I can say, except that just to continue a little bit from where I left out this morning when I was just explaining that the road to development is roads, and where I was saying this is just part of the modern economic infrastructure that this government is building. Likewise, that's regarding the physical infrastructure on roads, but also it involves the communication. It also involves the digital system that we're setting up. All that is part of the modern economic infrastructure. It also involves the technology that we've put into health, whether it's our cardiovascular imaging center, whether it's our lithotripsy or urology department, whether it's all the hydroponics for agriculture, and our tissue lab and our agricultural science building, whether it's the skills audit that we're getting done, and whether it's the bigger picture of the Goodwill Secondary School to provide all the skilled labor for all these different development programs that we have going on. And whether it's the Domino data system that I mentioned, is home, that platform which will help us in terms of deciding our land use and in terms of warning us in terms of disasters, etc., and just to optimize the land available. So that is the technology part involved in all this modern economic infrastructure. Obviously, the resilience part we've spoken about in many different times. This morning I mentioned the DOMCREP, and also by the end of the year through the GCF, we'll get the final go-ahead for our national financing vehicle, which is important because we need concessional financing to address all our climate issues. Also, the Integrated Coastal Zone Management Project, which is a $40 million project. All that is to deal with the coastal resilience aspect in all our different communities. So that's the resilient aspect. Mr. Speaker, also in part of this modern economic infrastructure, the financial institutions form a very integral part of that. So later in the proceedings, we have to bring up the OECD and the Tax Information Act, which we'll get later. But obviously our FIU, our FSU, and all the monetary and the financial institutions, that is also part of that modern economic infrastructure that we're speaking about. Mr. Speaker, the tourism part, whether it's the hotels, whether it's developing the different products that we have, whether it's the cable car that we have in, that is also part of this modern economic infrastructure. And then, Mr. Speaker, obviously, the icing on all of this, as I mentioned earlier, will be the international airport. But important to recognize that energy is part of that modern economic infrastructure. So this is where you have to contextualize and see the importance of this loan for the transmission system to make sure we have a sustainable, clean, renewable energy source for the development that we plan. This is the importance of this. Just so you mentioned the roads this morning, which is important, this is another very important part of that modern economic infrastructure. So I'm just stressing this again, that the public can recognize that we have a plan. This is how we're going to take Dominica to the next level. This is the platform that is being set. This is the vision that this government has, And this is the leadership that this government has that is putting everything in place for us. And Mr. Speaker, while we're doing all of this, it's important to note that we haven't forgotten the vulnerable and less fortunate among us. So our public assistance program still goes because we recognize that some of us may be in positions that we need help, and we haven't forgotten that. So some might say, well, we're spending so much money on all of this. But with all of this, we still haven't forgotten the less fortunate among us. And that is important, that this is the government that puts people first, so we can move ahead with all these agendas, but we don't forget the less fortunate and vulnerable. And that is important, Mr. Speaker, very, very important. A point was made a while ago about the social security, etc. But it would be interesting to know that the contributions have been increasing. They only increase because you have more people working. So we should take that into context as well. And then somehow, earlier on, some persons were a little concerned about the amount of debt and etc. and the money that we're taking. But let me just clarify a few things, Mr. Speaker. This loan falls within the debt management objectives and will not breach the quantitative targets as set out in the medium-term debt strategy. So that is important. So someone might be thinking, well, we're taking another loan, etc., etc. But this is within our medium-term debt strategy. So for instance, Mr. Speaker, the average time to maturity is above 9 years. That is within our medium-term debt strategy. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the interest rate of the loan is fixed, ensuring that the variable interest rate is below 15% of our total debt stock. So these are not just loans we just take. We think of those things within our strategy. That is why we can afford to do those loans. And Mr. Speaker, since the loan is denominated in SDR, special drawing rights, and payable in US dollars, this does not pose any significant exchange rate risk as the US dollar is pegged to the XDD at 2.7. So Mr. Speaker, we're well within our range, within our capacity in terms of our medium debt strategy. So the public should not be concerned as being brought across that is more loans and our children have to pay for it. But obviously, these loans are going to bring benefits. That's where the economic transformation is going to take place. So you have to spend to get something. If you don't spend, you're not going to get anything. So you have to look at it from that point of view and see that, yes, this takes planning, this is strategy, and this is what this government is all about. I think everything else has been explained from the technical point of Dr. Anderson, and the Prime Minister laid out all the different points and clarified all the different issues. So, Mr. Speaker, having said this, I think I'm pretty happy that all the different contributors were very much in favor of this loan, and the little questions that were asked, I think they've been clarified well enough. So it's time for us to move forward. Time for us to just get to that silver lining, Mr. Speaker. So we're well on our way, very well on our way. Thank you.
This concludes the debate on the motion. I will now put the question. Be it resolved that in accordance with Section 3(1) of the Loans Act, Chapter 6405, as amended, this Honorable House authorizes the Minister for Finance to borrow by means of credit a sum not exceeding SDR $28.9 million, which is equivalent to US $38.5 million or EC $103.95 million on the following terms. Interest, 3/4 of 1% per annum. Commitment charge, 1/2 of 1% per annum. Repayment, 60 semi-annual installments commencing May 15th, 2034. Grace period, 10 years. To finance the installation of a new electricity transmission network from the Roseau Valley to Dominica Electricity Services Limited Dominic Distribution Substation at Funkole. Those in favor? Those against? The motion has been approved.
I move the second reading of the bill shortly entitled Tax Information Exchange Amendment Act 2024. Mr. Speaker, in April 1988, the House of Assembly passed the Tax Information Exchange Act, Chapter 6702, to permit the control of inland revenue to share taxpayers' information and foreign tax information with foreign tax jurisdictions in instances where the government of Dominica and the foreign tax jurisdiction have entered into an agreement to share information regarding each other's taxpayers. In 2002, the government of Dominica gave its commitment to support the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, that's the OECD, with its work on harmful tax practices by committing to the principles of transparency and effective exchange of information relevant to tax matters upon request. The OECD has developed international standards of transparency and exchange of information, which have been endorsed globally. These standards include A, exchange of information on requests where it is foreseeably relevant to the administration and enforcement of the domestic laws of the treaty partners. B, no restrictions on exchange by reason of bank secrecy or domestic tax interest requirements. C, availability of reliable information and powers to obtain it. D, respect for taxpayers' rights and strict confidentiality of information exchanged. The OECD has developed a list of criteria which is used to measure countries' performance. These criteria cover tax transparency, fair taxation, and implementation of international standards designed to prevent tax base erosion and profit shifting. The list of criteria has been revised several times. To ensure compliance with the criteria, the European Union established a list of non-cooperative jurisdictions for tax purposes in December 2017. It is part of the EU's external strategy on taxation and aims to contribute to ongoing efforts to promote good tax governance worldwide. The OECD Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information on requests for tax purposes is responsible for assessing countries based on the criteria. Mr. Speaker, upon conclusion of Dominica's supplementary Phase 2 assessment in November 2023, Dominica was adjudged to be largely compliant. However, the Global Forum cited that Dominica's legal framework in relation to the sharing of tax information was not fully aligned with the criteria terms of reference B1, which states that competent authorities, in Dominica's case, the Controller of Inland Revenue, should have the power to obtain and provide information that is the subject of a request under an exchange of information arrangement from any person within their territorial jurisdiction who is in possession or control of such information. Based on review of our legislation, it was determined that the definition of items subject to legal privilege in Section 2 of the Tax Information Exchange Act, Chapter 6702, should be amended to fully align with the OECD criteria. Therefore, the draft bill which is being presented to the House today proposes to amend paragraph B of the definition of items subject to legal privilege by deleting the words "or" between such attorney at law or his client or any such representative and any other person. Importantly, Mr. Speaker, this amendment continues to protect communication between clients and the attorney, but would allow Inland Revenue to access information not protected by the attorney-client privilege. Parliament's approval of these amendments will assist Dominica in meeting its international tax obligations. Therefore, I look forward to the full support of every member of this Honorable House. The bill cited as Tax Information Exchange Amendment Act 2024 is now commended to the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The bill is before the House for debate.
Mr. Speaker, this is pretty much a straightforward bill, and the OECD, that's the Organization for Economic Development, Cooperation and Development. Mr. Speaker, we have to see the significance of this. As I said earlier, they were here in 2023, November, and they found us largely compliant. And if you remember, sometime before that, when we were not largely compliant, we ended up on a so-called blacklist. But with all the different changes that we've done, in terms of the human resource that we put into the different departments, how we've organized all the different financial departments, which is what I spoke about earlier when I spoke about the modern economic infrastructure. So the financial institutions is all part of this. So now with all of these changes that we've done, even with the legislation we put in place, and we spent quite a bit actually, Mr. Speaker, that is why we became largely compliant, and that is why we're no longer on that blacklist. So you have to see the significance of this, because if you end up on those blacklists, how much international trade you're going to have? Not much at all, because nobody would want to trade with you. So this is the importance of us passing such legislation so that we can remain largely compliant in all the different areas that we've been assessed, and obviously that we stay off the blacklist so that direct foreign exchange and transactions can take place. So that is just the importance of us having this piece of legislation amended here today. And I'm happy that everyone has agreed to it. And with this closing, I think we're in a better place, a much better place, if you ask me. And we'll be able to remain largely compliant, we'll remain off this blacklist so that business can continue as we expect it to. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
So this concludes the debate. It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Tax Information Exchange Amendment Act 2024 be read a second time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Tax Information Exchange Amendment Act 2024.
The bill will now stand committed to a committee of the whole House to be considered clause by clause. House resumes, and I have to report that the bill shortly entitled Tax Information Exchange Amendment Act 2024 passed the committee stage without amendment. The question is that the report of the committee on the bill be adopted. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. No.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill shortly entitled Tax Information Exchange Amendment Act 2024, be read a third time and passed.
Second, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Tax Information Exchange Amendment Act 2024 be read a third time and passed. Those in favor? Aye. Those against, the ayes have it.
Tax Information Exchange Amendment Act 2024.
The bill has been read a third time and passed accordingly.
Appointment of committees.
I thought you were asking the opposition leader to move the motion.
Yeah, that's why I was going.
Yeah, maybe you should, you should do it, yeah.
Mr. Speaker, I motion that Honorable Senator Shalika Vidal be member on the standing, Laurie Victor, sorry, be on the Standing Orders Committee.
Second. Yeah. It has been moved and seconded that the Honorable Senator, Laurie Victor. I don't understand what you said. Yeah, Laurie Victor. Oh, yes, it has been moved and seconded that Senator Laurie Victor be on a Standing Orders Committee. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
You ready? Yes. Mr. Speaker, I move that the House be adjourned second line. Second motion.
It has been moved and seconded that the House be adjourned, sign the die. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. House stands adjourned, sign the die. I think we had a great session, so dinner is served, although we had an early ending tonight. Upstairs. Yeah.